We're a bit late for this one, but I think this is still very valuable. And it represents, really, almost this past week's entire briefings of coronavirus meetings that these ministers have been desperate to put forward to the general public in an attempt, in a very vainglorious attempt to try and to seem that they know what they're talking about, despite the fact that their entire um, response to this entire process has been an absolute omnishambles. Well and truly, to use the classic Malcolm Tucker saying. Um, so you've got this was from, and this couldn't have come at a better time because this was their briefing on April 1st. So Alok Sharma made an well, absolute fool of himself. Well, it couldn't have gone worse. Just in a parallel universe, Chris Grayling could have spent his birthday. Yep, failing Grayling's birthday really is April Fool's, and to be the government's frontman at Downing Street daily coronavirus meeting. Just imagine Grayling's excitement at awarding a ventilator contract to a company that he has no prospect of of ever making a ventilator. Still, that's not much worse than what the reality of what the government having done sod all during January and February when they could have awarded contracts to companies to actually do make ventilators. Back in number 10, there must be an inquest going on into whose bright idea it was to have a daily coronavirus press conference. What must have it seemed like to have a show of strength and leadership when Boris Johnson and Classic Dom came up with a plan a week or so ago, now merely exposes the government's lack of preparedness and complete cluelessness every 24 hours. It's unbelievable. What's more, almost everyone in government knows it's a disaster, which is why most cabinet ministers switch their phones off for several hours every morning because they don't want to be the mug who winds up having to front the 45-minute embarrassment live on TV at 5 o'clock every night. So today's press conference was fronted by Alan Sharma, who not everyone in the cabinet knows the current business secretary, though he is a huge improvement on both Dominic Psycho-Rab and Michael Grove, simply because he doesn't have any of their associated instability and lack of trust issues. Put simply, Sharma is the man in whom the public can have complete confidence. The downside is that the confidence they have is that he can be guaranteed to know next to nothing about anything. After stating the last alarming death figures, Sharma lapsed into a whole range of generalities and platitudes. It's come to something that even Donald Trump can see the original herd immunity plan had been a disaster waiting to happen. Imagine being outthought by the US. Yeah, it's completely incredible, to be honest. Sharma then handed over to Yvonne Doyle, Director for Public Health England, who raced through her 4 slides at breakneck speed, largely because they were also thoroughly depressing. Believe it or not, this was actually the high point. The summit, the gravitas and disinformation, because from then on, it went on completely downhill. Often, these video press conferences can become can become filled with journalists asking a range of difficult questions that can be easily ignored, either by merely answering the easiest question or the one that they wish they had been asked. But now, the lobby, hunted as a pack, repeatedly pressing both Sharma and Doyle on the question of medical provisioning and testing. And Sharma and Doyle had nothing. Not even blanks to fire. Sharma kept trying to palm off the difficult questions onto Doyle, who then did her best to refer them back to the business secretary. The medical is now the political, and the political is now the medical, and neither side wants to take the blame. To really regain the public's trust, someone in government has to admit it basically did nothing for several months, as it was a totally underestimated the crisis, and it was more interested in Boris's 6th or 7th baby. But no one is prepared to do that, so we beat on. Boats against the current, bore against it carelessly back into the past. Why had Michael Gove insisted that thousands of ventilators were on their way next week? When the actual figure was 30. Both Sharma and Doyle shrugged. When the Germans are so far ahead of us on testing, why were we really so little England that we thought that we could learn nothing from Jerry? How come we've only tested 2,000 NHS staff of about 1 million frontline workers? Again, Sharma and Doyle just looked a little sheepish, just about above their pay grades. Have you got anything more than warm words and good intentions? One reporter asked. Sharma nodded earnestly. His words were going to get a lot warmer, red hot even, but his intentions were never going to be the best ever. And you ain't seen nothing yet, baby. You ain't seen nothing yet. And I hope I'm not the only person watching these briefings and just going, they have no clue what they're doing. And you can see the scale of the crisis that happened. This whole herd immunity strategy that they tried and implemented for over a week, where people were literally going, what are you doing? And yet here we are. All these deaths are caused because of whoever came up with that herd immunity strategy and pitched it to the government. And it's more likely that it was probably Dominic Cummings or Boris Johnson. And I tell you now, there will have to be an open public report. This is something Labour, Lib Dems, SNP, all the parties should get together and just start pushing for it right now. This is what needs to happen, an open public inquiry into what the hell went on during this crisis. And I tell you now, the findings are going to be pretty easy, because we already know them. The NHS has been woefully underprepared. Even Jeremy Hunt, apparently the man behind it all, shocked that the NHS isn't somehow more prepared for this crisis. We've had an investigation, a report from a recent think tank who advised the government on these potential flu pandemic outbreaks, and basically said, we don't want to spend all that money on equipment. You know, I've said before, this is austerity in action. It's having a real effect, and a lot of people are now really coming to understand what this whole austerity thing is. And then we get the government going on this massive spending spurge to try and protect the economy and things like that. Factors that we were told by the Conservatives themselves and the right-wing press in this country that if we did these things, it would bankrupt the country. Remember, at this time, you might be really lucky and have a really sympathetic landlord who said, I'm not going to collect your rent for the next 3 months. Out there right now, there are landlords who are still collecting rent, despite the fact they know full well that there are people who aren't in work, who don't currently have a job, who've been laid off and can't pay their rent. It's going to come to a head very quickly, very fast, depending how long this lasts. And the people to blame are Boris and the Tories. And I hope, if you were out last night clapping for the NHS, think on this. If you voted Tory and you were out there clapping last night, you might as well walked up to an NHS worker or a frontline worker, put on a plastic glove and just slap them round the face. So at least have the decency next time to understand that the Tories are completely incompetent, that their ideological fixation on that free markets and austerity has always been their choice, their decision. They're the ones who are literally making lives for people so much more worse.